Hi, and welcome back to SDI Coffee Break. Again, we're with Dan Turchin from PeopleReign. Hi, Dan.
Hey there, David. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. I don't know if you saw my coffee cup. I've not seen yours. So I don't know, at some point, either during this one, we might not record, maybe after, maybe with you getting coffee, because we're getting some deep territory now, Dan, I think it's fair to say. Some stuff that's hopefully making our listeners understand a little bit more, that 101, that demystification of AI. One thing I wanted to talk about on the back of the last one, which was a great story you mentioned, was the benefits, the perceived benefits, the actual benefits, and maybe some of the drawbacks, maybe some of the pros and cons of this type of technology and being adopted in a service environment. So let's maybe focus on some of those. And if somebody had asked me as a practitioner, what was the one thing I would have, what was my biggest problem, my biggest issue, the one thing I wanted to fix? And that was always mitigating human error. It's always trying to stop human error before it happened. Human error through not following a process properly. Human error because the person didn't have the knowledge. Human error because the wrong decision was made. And that was always something for me that was the root of everything that tended to be wrong. It was always that came down to human error. So let's talk about the benefits of AI. And I'm assuming that mitigating human error, based on what we said, is a primary benefit of AI, along with things like efficiency, along with things like precision and accuracy. Are they things that we get from it? Are machines better at that than us?
I'll go through a couple examples that I think are the best way to answer your question. I'll try to focus it on things that are probably relevant to your audience. So one common use case, it's not so much mitigating the risk of human error, but it's improving the customer experience. Mm-hmm. So as a service provider, if I can say automate the 50 to 60% of the requests that historically were dependent on a live agent in a call center, then I do two things. One, I reduce the downtime for that employee. And let's take kind of the canonical example is the password reset. Yeah. Maybe, I need a guest on the Wi-Fi network. I need to update my profile in the payroll system. Right? These are the things that gum up the inbox. And the unfortunate thing is that during the time when the live agent, your most expensive, most valuable resource, is resetting passwords, think about what they're not doing, right? And so on the front end, it's delivering a better experience. It's a zero downtime experience for common requests. And AI is great at doing that. It can identify the pattern, things that happen frequently. And oftentimes it's ironically, a much more human-like, a much better experience to have your password assisted or the reset of your password assisted by a virtual agent. Now, on the other side, what we're always trying to do with AI-driven automation is make humans the best versions of themselves. And again, that sounds ironic because we're using artificial intelligence, or what I refer to as augmented intelligence, essentially to make humans better. And an example of that is any question that's not a good fit for the virtual agent, you want to make sure the virtual agent is trained to, quote, know what it doesn't know, and do a seamless handoff to a live agent where the live agent is then assisted by AI in navigating through the issues. So you think about one use case, making sure that the task gets routed to the most appropriate agent based on their skill level or based on their work queue or based on their language capabilities. And then a second use case is once that task gets assigned to the right resource, instead of, say, languishing in a queue, maybe for hours, it's like what I shared about my friend Yvonne. It's now helping the agent to, reduce the uncertainty, the guesswork, the stuff that can lead to, a low, what we call FCR, first call resolution rate. Now it will be very, very high because the first time you're going to be partnered with that AI-driven recommendation system to be able to make sure you deliver the right answer the first time, you get the task into the right queue the first time. That's streamlining the process, making the process better for the end user, making the process better for the service desk agent. That's the present of AI.
Yeah, and I think again, if you think about what that means in an assistive sense, I mean, when this sort of thing started to break, so probably for me, this thing in service management sense, we started to see organizations starting to harness robotic process automation, using automation, stuff like that. And then we saw organizations, one that was based in, at the time, UK organization in Romania, bringing in an avatar, bringing in a virtual agent. And I remember this thing starting to break, and there was a lot of hype. There still is a lot of hype. But my primary feeling was, my God, this is what we've been waiting for in IT support, in the service desk. This is what we've been waiting for years. And when you're absolutely right, when you take away that 60, 70, 80% of demand for password resets that are manually reset, some of them have 100% SLA that you need an infinite team to resolve. If you've got a fire alarm, this is the type of thing. This type of stuff is what we've been waiting for forever. So it's really interesting. Now, does it come though? And I think the answer is yes. Does it come with another side? Does it come with challenges? Does it come, that pros and cons thing? I read a lot about at the minute about reskilling, the need for reskilling in organizations to bring this type of stuff in. The stuff around information around the availability of data, the quality of the data, the sort of the displacement of skills as well. So what do you think of the drawbacks? Not the drawbacks, wrong word. What do you think of the challenges organizations are going to have to face as they adopt some of this stuff?
Yeah, I'd consider them more, call it impediments or road bumps, rather than challenges or obstacles. And so you hit on the two key ones. One key challenge for organizations is adoption. So there are cultural impediments to success. So oftentimes, what we'll think of as a technology project is really about cultural transformation. So you want to think about things like, how do you reward adoption? And how do you provide that safety net so that no employee ever feels like they're penalized because of the introduction of a virtual agent? It's only net positive, right? They're always, a button click or, an ask away from being seamlessly handed over to a live agent. That's the way you accelerate adoption. And then the second one, we'll call it a technical impediment, but really, to the point you made, it's more about data hygiene. And we don't often think about, we're trying to demystify AI, but all AI problems are data problems. And what I mean by that is the system is only as intelligent, or it will only seem as intelligent as the data is high quality. So it comes from everything from making sure the data is consistent. If, for example, a telephony support request, half the time it was routed to Dublin, Ireland, and half the time it was routed to Seattle, Washington in the past, then without some kind of active learning or annotation of the historical data, you're asking the AI algorithm to guess. You don't need to have the AI algorithm guess, you just need consistent data. Yeah. Another thing is thinking about, where does the data live? How do I get to it? An important concept that I want to make sure we bring up, even in these short clips that we're doing, is recognizing if there's inherent bias in the data.
That was my next question. Yeah, that was my next question, because there's a lot of talk about that. If anything, it keeps coming back for me when I've seen stuff. Is to that is almost the frailty of the people who are making the AI rather than the AI itself. Does that make sense? So yeah, let's do that bias thing. Let's get that out of the way. Yeah.
Critical concept, and I'll give you an example of how subtle biased data can lead to biased decision making. This is scratching below the surface of the kind of gender bias or race-based bias that you read about in the headlines.
Yeah.
At PeopleReign, we automate the resolution of service requests, and it turned out that we had trained an AI algorithm, a model, on some data that was likely to assign a certain kind of request in a certain region to a very large, a global service provider. And in so doing, route these requests around regional providers with the same skill set. So PeopleReign was very unintentionally training the model that when this particular kind of task was performed by large co, it was working, because either large co or small co could fulfill the task. But because the data said it should be routed to large co, because small co wasn't represented in the data set, we were unintentionally training a model to bias this particular task against the local, potentially, minority owned, maybe female owned businesses. And that was not through any, intention of the developer of the algorithm. And it certainly, was not something that was happening by design. But if you let that biased data, persist in making biased decisions, then part of what happens is the algorithm learns over time based on feedback it gets about whether or not its recommendation or prediction was successful, and it perpetuates this bias. Now, obviously, if you extrapolate that out into other use cases, this can become very dangerous when you're thinking about, whether or not a convicted criminal, what their sentencing should be, or should a mother be able to have custody over her kids under certain circumstances. The implications are very significant, and again, I appreciate you letting me get on a soapbox a bit, but I think it's really important to think about data consistency, data quality, and data bias that's inherent in the decisions that end up getting made by AI.
Yeah. And is there a sort of foolproof way to build that into the development of AI? Is there a methodology to sort of pull bias out?
So one of my passion projects is making sure that every vendor of an AI first solution is, call it, scored. They get a scorecard on the quality of the AI based decisions. And whether there's kind of regulatory frameworks that get developed, or maybe third-party bodies. But I think just like a restaurant gets a quality score, you probably don't want to go, well, now under the pandemic, this is a weird one, but you don't want to have dinner at a place that's a grade C. You want to focus on the grade A's. Likewise, these independent bodies will evaluate. Humans evaluating the quality of these predictions. I think this is a problem that is being perpetuated by machines, but the solution involves humans, and we're going to create a ton of new jobs by really committing to responsible AI.
And responsibility and ethics as well in relation to that. So if I'm an organization maybe, or an owner, a leader in an organization that is going after the quick buck first over a really good outcome, man, this I don't know whether this perpetuates. I'm not close enough to the industry to know that this kind of stuff perpetuates the negative connotation of AI, if it continually does that, But I think you're right. It's very, very interesting, isn't it? That sort of thing. I was thinking when we talked, the Microsoft wow. I followed that when it came out and couldn't believe how quickly that just tumbled. Couldn't believe it. I don't know if we've got probably I'm going to have time to go into it now, but that was incredible how quickly it tumbled just because of
the worst version of hate, because it could be manipulated. And that's good example.
Crazy. Good. Okay, we're going to close on that positive note, maybe in this one, right? And catch up in the next one where we'll expand on some of this again. And I think we'll talk about in the next one, what it really does mean for a service desk. What do you mean over the next 2, 3, 4 years for people working in the service desk right now? So thank you very much indeed, Dan. Thank you for that. Thank you for our listeners, and we'll see you in the next session. Thank you very much.